Through eyes he can barely open, Staff Sergeant Roy Benavidez can just about make out the extraction helicopter clawing its way toward him. He's barely alive, hit by more bullets, shrapnel, and grenade fragments than any man should be able to take. But he's done it. Wounded men loaded onto the Huey, classified documents secured. All that's left is to climb aboard and escape. Suddenly, the helicopter slams sideways into the jungle floor, its pilot struck by communist gunfire. Fuel gushes out of its engine, just one tracer round away from erupting in flames, with the team Benavidez has just rescued trapped inside. He's going to have to save them all over again. And the longest day in Roy Benavidez's life is only just beginning. Earlier that day, May 2nd, 1968, at the forward operating base at Loc Ninh, South Vietnam, Staff Sergeant Benavidez hears the radio crackle to life with a desperate plea, quote, "Get us out of here. Get us out of here. Come and get us out. Quick. ASAP." The voice belongs to a member of a 12-man Special Forces reconnaissance team that was inserted by helicopter into dense jungle west of Loc Ninh that morning. The team, 3 Green Berets and 9 Montagnard tribesmen, walked straight into hell. Sergeant First Class Leroy Wright, Staff Sergeant Lloyd Frenchy Mousseau, Specialist 4 Brian O'Connor, and the Montagnards are surrounded by an entire North Vietnamese Army battalion, somewhere between 500 and 1,500 veteran soldiers. 3 extraction helicopters have already attempted the rescue. All 3 were driven back by withering small arms fire and anti-aircraft weapons, limping back to base with wounded crew and shattered aircraft. Benavidez monitors the situation from the communications bunker as the damaged helicopters touch down. Crew members are rushed to medical stations. Pilots assess the bullet holes riddling their aircraft. The soldiers on the ground are running out of time. For 32-year-old Benavidez, this isn't just another mission gone wrong. He's got personal reasons to care about the men's fate. Just days earlier, Wright saved his life during an extraction using a Maguire rig, a dangerous rope system used when helicopters can't land. When the ropes twisted together and began burning from friction, Wright tied himself off and climbed out to separate them, all while under enemy fire. Now, Wright is the one who needs saving, and Benavidez is determined to repay the debt. Without waiting for orders, the former shoeshine and farm worker from rural Texas hurriedly grabs a medical bag loaded with bandages, morphine, and supplies. Though in his haste, he forgets to pick up his M16 rifle. He sprints toward a helicopter, preparing for another rescue attempt. Armed with only his Bowie knife, Benavidez jumps into the helicopter bay, looks at the 3-man crew, and simply says, quote, "I'm coming with you." The rotors begin to spin. Before long, the helicopter approaches the landing zone, but the pilot can't bring it down. Intense enemy fire erupts from the tree line, muzzle flashes winking from dozens of positions, tracer rounds arcing through the air, the distinctive crack of AK-47s mixing with the deeper thump of machine guns. The forward air controller's voice crackles over the radio, quote, "You can't go in there. You can't go in. It's too hot." The pilot holds the aircraft in a hover, getting as low as he can. Incoming rounds punch through the helicopter's thin skin. If it lingers any longer, it'll be shot down entirely. For Benavidez, it's now or never. He looks down at the jungle floor below. 80 yards separate him from the trapped team. 80 yards of open ground under fire from a battalion of North Vietnamese regulars who've had all morning to dig in and prepare their positions. He makes the sign of the cross over his chest and jumps. The moment his boots hit the ground, Benavidez starts running. The medical bag bounces against his side. Enemy fire tears through the vegetation around him. Bullets snap past his head. Before he's covered half the distance, a round slams into his right leg. He stumbles, but keeps moving. The pain is sharp but distant. Adrenaline has already taken over. Seconds later, shrapnel from an exploding grenade tears into his face and head. Blood pours into his eyes. Another fragment rips into his back. Benavidez forces himself forward through the hail of fire. Every instinct screams at him to dive for cover, to find a hole and stay down. Instead, he runs toward the sound of American weapons. He reaches the team's position and drops behind what little cover they have. The situation is even worse than the radio traffic suggested. 4 men are already lying lifeless. As Benavidez rapidly scans their faces, his heart sinks. Among the fallen is Sergeant First Class Wright. the man who'd saved his life just days before, but there's no time for guilt. The remaining 8 men are still alive, but they're all wounded, some critically, several can barely move. They're pinned down in thick brush with no clear path to an extraction point, and an entire enemy battalion closing in. Someone has to organize this chaos, and right now, that someone is him. With no time to waste, Benavidez grabs a rifle from one of the bodies strewn around the jungle floor and starts barking orders, repositioning the wounded men who can still fire their weapons to create better fields of fire. He directs the remaining firepower toward the heaviest concentrations of enemy troops, buying precious seconds. The communist forces are everywhere, pressing closer, their fire intensifying as they sense victory. Benavidez pulls smoke canisters from his gear and hurls them into the clearing. Thick colored smoke billows up, marking the team's position for the extraction helicopter. Through the haze and blood in his eyes, he sees a helicopter approaching. The pilot brings the aircraft as low as he dares, hovering just feet off the ground. Enemy bullets punch through the thin aluminum skin. The door gunner returns fire, his M60 chattering. Benavidez doesn't wait. He grabs the nearest wounded man and begins dragging him toward the helicopter. The man is too badly hurt to walk. Benavidez hauls him across the open ground, bullets kicking up dirt around them. He loads the wounded soldier aboard and immediately turns back. One by one, he takes half the wounded team members to the waiting aircraft, providing covering fire as he goes. Some he carries over his shoulder, others he drags by their web gear. As the helicopter repositions to pick up the remaining team members, Benavidez runs alongside it, firing in enemy positions that threaten the aircraft. The pilot edges forward, trying to reach the rest of the team. As he continues giving cover, Benavidez's eyes lock on Sergeant First Class Wright's body. Hanging from the fallen team leader's neck is a pouch containing classified documents, radio codes, call signs, operational plans. If those papers fall into enemy hands, they'll compromise operations across the entire region. There's only one thing for it. He sprints toward Wright's position. The enemy fire grows more intense, as if they know what he's after. As Benavidez reaches down to grab the pouch, an AK-47 round punches into his abdomen. Almost simultaneously, a grenade detonates nearby. Shrapnel tears into his back. The impact knocks him to his knees, but somehow his hands keep moving. Gritting his teeth as he fights through the pain, he rips the pouch free and shoves the classified documents into his shirt. At nearly that exact moment, the helicopter pilot jerks in his seat. He's been hit by a North Vietnamese bullet. The aircraft lurches sideways, its rotor wash throwing up dust and debris. The helicopter tips, crashes onto its side, and the rotors disintegrate against the ground. Benavidez looks on, clutching his abdomen where the bullet entered. Grenade fragments are embedded in his back. He's been hit in the leg, face, and head. By any reasonable measure, he should be going into shock. But Benavidez is made of stronger stuff than most. Making sure the classified documents are secured against his chest, he begins crawling toward the helicopter wreckage, where the crew and passengers are still trapped inside. By now, smoke pours from the downed helicopter's engine. A rapidly expanding puddle of leaking fuel spreads beneath the wreckage. If it ignites, anyone nearby will be burned alive. It's not a fate Benavidez particularly wants for himself, but he would wish it even less upon his brothers in arms. As he inches closer to the helicopter, he hears some of the men screaming. Others are ominously silent. Time is running out, every passing second increasing the risk of them all being caught in a blazing inferno. Finally, Benavidez reaches the aircraft and starts pulling them out. The co-pilot, the door gunner, wounded soldiers he just loaded aboard moments ago. One at a time, he drags them clear of the wreck. Every movement sends fresh waves of pain through his shattered body, but he keeps moving. With the survivors extracted from the aircraft, Benavidez begins organizing them into a defensive perimeter around the crash site as best he can. Some of the men are in shock, staring blankly at the wreckage, while others continue shouting in agony. The situation has gone from desperate to catastrophic. The North Vietnamese sense it too. Their fire intensifies as they maneuver for a final assault to overrun the position. Despite his wounds, Benavidez moves around the perimeter, distributing ammunition he's gathered from the fallen and from the helicopter. He passes out water to men whose throats are parched from fear and exertion. When he finds soldiers on the verge of giving up, he talks to them, refocuses them, reinstills in them the will to keep fighting. Yet as he does so, he can see more enemy troops moving through the jungle, working their way closer. The communists are building up strength, preparing for a coordinated attack. Benavidez knows his small group of survivors won't last another 10 minutes, unless they can get air support. He gets on the radio and begins calling in tactical airstrikes. The enemy positions are so close that the bombs will fall dangerously close to his own men, but right now, it's the only option. Phantom jets scream in low, releasing their bombs. Explosions erupt through the jungle. Supporting gunships follow, their miniguns tearing through enemy positions. Benavidez directs their attack, calling out coordinates, adjusting their runs, bringing the massive firepower to within yards of his own perimeter. The enemy assault falters. North Vietnamese soldiers break off their attack, retreating deeper into the jungle. The airstrike has brought Benavidez and his group of survivors some time, but will it be enough? Hours drag by. The sun beats down mercilessly. Benavidez continues moving around the perimeter, checking on his men, redistributing ammunition, calling for more airstrikes whenever the enemy tries to mass for another assault. By now, he can barely see. When the enemy probes their defenses again, and he needs to call in another strike, he directs the aircraft by sound alone, listening to the movement of enemy troops through the jungle, estimating distances, trusting his instincts. A devout Catholic, Benavidez makes the sign of the cross so frequently throughout the ordeal that he says his arms look like an airplane propeller. Each time he moves to help another wounded man, each time he hears incoming fire, each time he calls an airstrike down upon the enemy. The familiar gesture grounds him, reminds him why he's still fighting. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the sound of rotor blades cuts through the chaos. Another extraction helicopter inbound. But right at that moment, while Benavidez is crouched beside a wounded soldier, administering what little first aid he can with his dwindling supplies, another shot finds him, tearing into his thigh. His 5th gunshot wound of the day. The pilot manages to land in the clearing. One of the wounded soldiers near Benavidez looks at him with concern, taking in the crimson-soaked uniform, the multiple wounds, the way Benavidez is barely staying upright. The man asks, quote, "Are you hurt bad, Sarge?" Benavidez, though about to collapse from blood loss, gives him a defiant look and replies, quote, "Hell no. I've been hit so many times, I don't give a damn no more." With the helicopter waiting, Benavidez begins ferrying his comrades to the craft. No time for weakness now. Not when salvation is finally within reach. The helicopter waits, rotors spinning, as Benavidez begins loading the wounded on board. But on his second trip back to the perimeter, carrying Lloyd Mousseau over his shoulder, something suddenly moves behind him. Before he can react, a North Vietnamese soldier emerges from the brush and swings his rifle like a club. The stock connects with Benavidez's face. His jaw shatters. The impact drops him to his knees, and Mousseau tumbles from his shoulder. The enemy soldier stands over him, bayonet fixed to his rifle. He thrusts the blade forward. Benavidez's hands shoot up instinctively. He catches the bayonet with his right hand, but the soldier's momentum carries the blade through, and the bayonet pierces Benavidez's left forearm. For a moment, the two men are locked together. Then, Benavidez reaches for his Bowie knife. He pulls it free and drives it into his attacker. The communist soldier collapses. Benavidez pulls the bayonet from his arm. He staggers to his feet, grabs Mousseau again, and continues toward the helicopter under devastating enemy fire. As he nears the aircraft, movement catches his eye. 2 more North Vietnamese soldiers are rushing the helicopter from an angle that prevents the door gunner from engaging them. They're seconds away from throwing grenades into the packed crew compartment. Benavidez drops Mousseau near the helicopter and snatches up a fallen AK-47. Despite his severely impaired vision, he brings the rifle up and fires. Both enemy soldiers go down. With what little strength he has left, Benavidez makes one final trip back to the perimeter. After ensuring all classified material has been collected or destroyed, he finds the remaining wounded men and helps them toward the aircraft. Only then, with every mission objective complete, does he allow the others to pull him aboard the helicopter. He collapses into the crew compartment, and the aircraft lifts off. 6 hours in hell are finally over. Looking down, Benavidez realizes the extent of his wounds. He has 37 separate bullet, bayonet, and shrapnel wounds. As the base comes into view, he loses consciousness. The helicopter touches down, and the crew begins unloading casualties. Medical personnel rush forward to examine the returning soldiers, deciding who can be saved and who is beyond help. Benavidez lies motionless among them, He's so covered in blood and dirt that in the chaos, medical staff mistake him for one of the 3 lifeless North Vietnamese soldiers he'd accidentally loaded onto the helicopter. They place him alongside the enemy fallen, setting bodies in a row on the ground. By now, his eyes are sealed shut, caked with dried blood. His jaw is shattered. He can't speak, even if he wanted to. All he can do is listen to the sounds around him. Boots on dirt, voices calling for supplies, and moans of the wounded. Then he feels hands on his feet. They're lifting him. He's being moved. A moment later, he realizes where. Into a body bag. The zipper begins to close. He can hear it, that distinctive metallic sound getting closer. Up his legs, past his torso, toward his face. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the chaos. Jerry Cottingham, a friend, has spotted him. He's screaming at the medical personnel, quote, "That's Roy. That's Roy Benavidez." A doctor approaches. Benavidez hears him say, quote, "Sorry, there's nothing I can do for him." The zipper continues its journey upward. Benavidez can't open his eyes, can't speak, can't move his broken body. But he knows that if the bag closes completely, they'll never check again. Cottingham doesn't give up. He makes the doctor at least check for a heartbeat. When the doctor's hand presses against Benavidez's chest, feeling for signs of life, Benavidez summons every ounce of strength he has left. He gives the only sign of life he can manage. He spits in the doctor's face. The doctor jerks back in shock. Half disgusted, half relieved, he turns to Cottingham and exclaims, quote, "I think he'll make it." Medical staff rush Benavidez into surgery. They work through the night to stabilize him. He's transferred to Saigon, then eventually back to Brooke Army Medical Center at Fort Sam Houston in Texas, the same hospital where 3 years earlier, after stepping on a landmine during his first tour in Vietnam, doctors told him he'd never walk again. That time, they'd been wrong. He would crawl at night against doctors' orders, forcing his paralyzed body to move, until he finally walked out in July 1966. But this time, the damage is much worse. 7 major gunshot wounds, 28 shrapnel holes in his head, scalp, shoulder, buttocks, feet, and legs. Both arms slashed by the bayonet. His right lung destroyed. The recovery takes nearly a year. On September 10th, 1968, while Benavidez is still in the hospital, he receives a visitor. General William C. Westmoreland, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, arrives to present him with the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor. Benavidez's commander wanted to nominate him for the Medal of Honor, but he was certain Benavidez would succumb to his wounds before the lengthy approval process could be completed. The Distinguished Service Cross could be awarded much faster. Better to give him something he could receive while still alive. Except Benavidez lives. He recovers and returns to duty. But the story of what happened on May 2nd isn't over. In 1973, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph R. Drake learns more details about that day's action and becomes convinced that Benavidez did indeed deserve to receive the Medal of Honor. There's a problem, though. The time limit for the award has expired. Drake appeals to Congress. They grant an exemption for Benavidez, but the Army Decorations Board denies the upgrade. Their reason is that regulations require an eyewitness account from someone present during the action. Benavidez is certain that nobody who saw what happened that day is still around to tell the tale. In 1976, Benavidez retires from the military, returning to El Campo with his wife and 3 children. Any hope he once had of receiving the Medal of Honor slowly fades. But rather than growing bitter, he throws himself into working with young people, speaking at schools across the United States with a simple message, quote, "An education is the key to success. Bad habits and bad company will ruin you." Yet unbeknownst to him, there is, in fact, one other survivor from May 2nd, 1968, Brian O'Connor. The specialist had been so badly wounded during the extraction that as far as Benavidez could tell, there's no way he could have made it. But somehow he did. However, he was evacuated to the United States before his superiors could fully debrief him about the mission. After recovering, he disappears into civilian life. In 1980, O'Connor is on vacation in Australia when he picks up a newspaper. Inside is an article from the El Campo, Texas Press that's been picked up internationally. It's about Roy Benavidez and his Distinguished Service Cross. O'Connor immediately knows what he needs to do. He contacts Benavidez and submits a 10-page eyewitness report, confirming everything and providing the testimony the Army required. The upgrade is approved. On February 24, 1981, Benavidez stands before President Ronald Reagan at the Pentagon. Before reading the citation, Reagan turns to the press and says, quote, "If the story of his heroism were a movie script, you wouldn't believe it." Nearly 13 years after that fateful day in the jungle west of Loch Ninh, Roy Benavidez is finally presented with the Medal of Honor. In 1983, when the Social Security Administration plans to cut disability payments for thousands of veterans, including Benavidez himself, he goes to Capitol Hill. He testifies before the House Select Committee on Aging, pleading with them to abandon their plans. They do. He becomes a sought-after speaker at military installations, civic groups, and schools worldwide, visiting Greece, Panama, Korea, and Japan. He writes 3 autobiographical books about his life and service. When people call him a hero, he deflects, quote, "The real heroes are the ones who gave their lives for their country." On November 29, 1998, at age 63, Roy Benavidez passes away. More than 1,500 attend his funeral. The U.S. Navy names a cargo ship after him, an unprecedented honor for an Army sergeant. Schools, parks, and armories nationwide bear his name. In Special Forces units, when courage is needed, they still invoke his call sign, Tango Mike Mike.